The rain had been falling since noon, turning the city into a reflection of itself, blurred lights, rushing shadows, and the steady hum of water sliding down glass. Benjamin Hard watched it from the back seat of a yellow cab, his mind already somewhere else. Another case closed, another lie exposed, another tired handshake from a grateful client. He didn't like endings. They always felt too neat for a world that rarely was. The cab stopped at the curb in front of his building, an old brick structure in Manhattan, tall windows dimly glowing against the storm. Inside, his apartment waited like a sanctuary, shelves of books, the faint smell of green tea, the soft hum of a piano in the corner. On his desk, among the usual stack of letters and unpaid bills, something stood out, a plain white envelope. No name. No stamp. Just his address, written in a firm, elegant hand. Benjamin turned it over in his fingers. The paper was thick, expensive, too deliberate to be junk mail. He opened it carefully. Inside was a single photograph, a young woman standing by a tall window in an old house. Her face was calm, but her eyes were, waiting. Watching something, maybe someone. Below the photograph, a line of typed text. She will disappear tomorrow. If you're fast enough, you might save more than her. Benjamin frowned. No signature. No clues. Just that strange chill of precision, the kind of message that isn't random. He poured himself a cup of tea, the soft clink of porcelain echoing in the quiet room. Then he looked at the photo again, studying every detail, the reflection of the trees in the glass, the texture of the wallpaper, a faint number barely visible on the corner of the window frame, 421. It wasn't the first time someone tried to play games with him. But this one felt different. Personal. He searched his memory. The woman's face, vaguely familiar, though he couldn't place it. The house behind her looked old, maybe on the outskirts of the city. He turned the photo over. Nothing. The sound of thunder rolled across Manhattan. Somewhere below, a siren wailed, distant, fading into the storm. Benjamin took a slow breath and reached for his coat. There were 1,000 reasons to ignore the letter. But one thing about Benjamin Hard, he never ignored curiosity. He grabbed his umbrella, locked the door, and stepped back into the rain. By the time he reached his car, the city lights had melted into the night. He entered the address, 421, Willow Street, into his navigation system. No results. He tried again. Still nothing. And yet, he knew there was a Willow Street, somewhere deep in the older part of town, near the river. A place that rarely showed up on maps, where houses had names instead of numbers. As the wipers cut across the windshield, he caught his own reflection in the glass, calm, analytical, slightly amused. He smirked to himself. Let's see what game you're playing. The drive was long and silent, the city thinning into forgotten streets. When he finally turned onto Willow Street, the rain eased to a whisper. There it was, a house standing alone beneath the weight of time. Tall, crooked, its windows dark except for one faint glow upstairs. Benjamin parked the car and stepped out. The air smelled of wet leaves and rust. The front gate creaked as he pushed it open. Somewhere inside the house, a floorboard answered, a single, tired sound. He stopped. Listened. Only the rain. Then, as lightning flashed across the street, he saw it, a figure behind the glass, standing exactly where the woman in the photo had been. Still. Watching him. When the light faded, the window was empty. Benjamin took one slow breath, the kind he always took before a case began, and whispered to himself. All right, then. Let's begin. The house stood like a survivor of another century. Its walls were scarred with time, paint peeling in long pale strips, ivy crawling across broken shutters. The kind of place the city had forgotten, or chosen to. Benjamin stepped through the gate, the sound of metal scraping stone echoing behind him. Each step on the front porch made the wood groan in protest. He tried the door handle, it gave way easily. Too easily. Inside, the air was heavy with dust and silence. The smell of damp wood and something faintly sweet, like candle wax. His flashlight sliced through the darkness, revealing what was left of a life once lived, a toppled chair, an empty picture frame, the outline of a clock on the wall where time had stopped long ago. He moved slowly, his senses sharpened. The echo of his footsteps seemed to arrive a moment too late, as if the house was thinking about whether to answer. On the floor near the staircase, he found melted wax, fresh. He crouched down, ran his finger over it. Still soft. Someone had been here tonight. A faint noise, a whisper, maybe the wind, drifted from upstairs. Benjamin looked toward the staircase, its railing splintered, its top swallowed by shadow. He climbed. Each step creaked, measured, deliberate. At the top, a narrow hallway stretched ahead, lined with doors on both sides. His light caught a flicker of movement, a curtain swaying where no window was open. He approached the room. The door was half closed, and behind it, a dim glow pulsed like a heartbeat. He pushed the door open. It was a bedroom, or what remained of one. Torn wallpaper, an old iron bed, a shattered mirror leaning against the wall. The glow came from a single candle, still burning beside the window. And there, taped to the glass, was the same photograph he had found in the letter. Only this time, someone had drawn a thin black line through the woman's face. Benjamin's expression didn't change, but his pulse quickened. He turned slowly, scanning the corners. The air felt charged, like the moment before thunder. Then something caught his attention. On the floor, half buried under a sheet of paper, was a fragment of an old newspaper. He picked it up carefully. The headline read, "Marlow family still missing, 10 years after mysterious disappearance." Beneath it, a faded picture, the same house. The same window. He whispered under his breath. Marlow. The name rang a faint bell in his memory. He'd heard it before, somewhere buried deep in the archives of his past cases. Thunder rolled again outside, closer this time. Benjamin pocketed the newspaper clipping and turned off the candle with a slow breath. The flame died, leaving the room in near darkness, except for a sudden flash of lightning outside. For a fraction of a second, in the broken mirror's reflection, he saw a figure standing behind him. Tall. Motionless. He spun around. Nothing. Only shadows. The silence pressed against his ears, thick and deliberate. Then, from downstairs, came a faint thud, like a door closing on its own. He walked back toward the stairs, every nerve awake. When he reached the front hall, he saw something he hadn't before, a trail of wet footprints leading from the entrance toward the back of the house. Barefoot. Fresh. Benjamin followed them slowly, the beam of his flashlight steady, his breath shallow. The prints led to a back door that stood slightly open, swaying with the wind. Outside, rain fell softly over the yard, and there, at the far edge of it, he thought he saw someone watching him from the trees. A silhouette. Then gone. He stepped outside, scanning the darkness, but there was nothing, just the sound of water and the whisper of leaves. When he turned back toward the house, he noticed something in the upstairs window, the one from the photograph. The candle was burning again. Benjamin stared for a long moment, then whispered to himself with quiet certainty. "You want me to follow? Fine." He pulled the newspaper from his coat pocket, folded it neatly, and walked back to his car. The rain had started again, slow, steady, like a clock counting down. The morning came gray and hollow, like the city itself hadn't slept. Benjamin sat by the window of a small cafe in Lower Manhattan, watching people move beneath umbrellas, strangers in their own lives. In front of him, his coffee had gone cold. On the table lay the photograph, now creased from being turned over too many times. He'd already called a contact at the NYPD, a detective named Keller, someone who owed him more than one favor. The news came quickly. The woman in the photograph had a name. Evelyn Marlow. Age 29. Lived alone in an apartment in Queens. Reported missing less than 24 hours ago. No signs of forced entry, no note, no witnesses. She'd simply vanished. Benjamin stared at the photo again, the quiet expression, the steady gaze. She didn't look like someone afraid. She looked like someone waiting. Keller had offered to meet, but Benjamin declined. He preferred to see things himself. The police saw facts. He saw patterns. By noon, he was standing outside Evelyn's building, a modest brick complex near the East River. The kind of place where lives drifted by quietly. The superintendent recognized the name and hesitated before speaking. Yeah, she was a quiet one. Kept to herself. Always looked over her shoulder, though. Lately she seemed nervous. Benjamin asked for the apartment key. Money and reputation made most doors open easily. Inside, Evelyn's apartment was clean, minimal, almost sterile. No clutter, no mess, except for the living room table. On it sat a single cup of tea, cold, untouched. He walked through slowly, his eyes catching every detail. The bookshelf was sparse, psychology, philosophy, a few old crime novels. On the nightstand by her bed, a music box sat open but silent. Inside it, something glinted. A small brass key. He turned it over in his hand. On its handle, an engraving, WS 421. Willow Street. Benjamin felt the familiar tension build in his chest, that quiet hum of realization that always preceded a discovery. He placed the key in his pocket and looked around once more. The walls were bare except for one frame, a photo of a man and a woman, her parents, smiling on a front porch. He recognized the house instantly. The same one from Willow Street. 10 years ago, the Marlow family disappeared. The father was accused of murder. The case went cold. And now their daughter was gone too. The phone in his pocket buzzed, a message from Keller. You'll want to see this. He drove to the precinct through thick, heavy rain. Inside, Keller looked uneasy. He handed Benjamin a printed note. Found in her mailbox this morning. Postmarked yesterday. Benjamin read it slowly. Typed words. The same font, the same rhythm as the first letter he'd received. You were part of this once. You just don't remember. He looked up. Whoever sent this knows me. Keller frowned. Maybe a client. Someone from an old case. Benjamin shook his head. No. This isn't revenge. This is orchestration. He left the station without another word, the letter still in his hand. Outside, the sky had turned the color of iron. Back in his car, he replayed everything in his mind, the photo, the house, the key, the name Marlow. And beneath it all, a whisper of something he couldn't quite reach. 10 years ago, he'd helped the police close the Marlow case. A messy investigation, full of missing evidence and nervous witnesses. The father, Thomas Marlow, had taken the blame for the murder of his business partner. Benjamin's analysis had been the turning point. But the body had never been found. He'd never questioned that. Until now. As he sat in the driver's seat, thunder cracked overhead. He caught his reflection in the rearview mirror, sharp eyes, calm face, and for a second, he thought he saw someone standing behind him. He turned. Empty back seat. Only the sound of rain. Benjamin started the engine, his expression unreadable. If you want me to remember, he murmured, then show me what I missed. He pulled into traffic, the city lights flickering across his windshield like ghosts. In his pocket, the brass key felt heavier than it should, as if it already knew where it belonged. The rain hadn't stopped for 2 days. New York felt quieter under the downpour, as if the city itself was trying to wash something away. Benjamin sat in the archives of the 11th precinct, surrounded by the scent of paper and metal. He had convinced Keller to let him in after hours. No one else wanted to dig through old ghosts. He placed the brass key on the table beside a worn-out folder marked Marlow Case, 2015. The paper was yellowed, the ink slightly blurred. Time had done its best to erase what was written there. Benjamin began to read. The report described the disappearance of the Marlow family, Thomas, his wife Helen, and their daughter, Evelyn. The father had been accused of murdering his business partner, a man named Victor Hale. Blood was found in the family home, but no bodies. The father denied everything. Then one morning, the entire family vanished. Benjamin remembered being called in as an external consultant back then. He had examined the psychological profile of Thomas Marlow, calm, calculating, intelligent. Too calm, he'd written in his notes. A man capable of staging a disappearance. His testimony had helped secure a conviction in absentia. Case closed. But now, staring at those same pages, something felt wrong. He flipped through the photos, the house, the study, the broken window. He paused. In one of the photos, a reflection in the glass, faint but visible, a tall figure, wearing a long coat. Not Marlow. And yet, familiar. Benjamin leaned closer. The shape of the shoulders, the tilt of the head, it looked like him. He blinked. No, impossible. He hadn't even been at that scene. Or had he? He searched the file for attendance records, his name was there, signed on the same date the photo was taken. He couldn't remember being there that day. He sat back, eyes narrowing. What are you hiding from me, Thomas? The sound of rain tapped against the small window near the ceiling. He turned to the final page of the report. A handwritten note was clipped to it, not part of the official file. Evidence removed from scene, 1 key, brass, marked W.S.421. Return pending. Benjamin's hand froze. The same key now lay beside him on the table. Someone had taken it from the evidence box, and placed it in Evelyn's apartment. His pulse quickened. Someone wasn't just revisiting the past, they were rewriting it. He closed the file and stood. The room felt smaller now, the shadows thicker. On his way out, the janitor looked up from sweeping the hallway. Working late, Mr. Hard? Seems like the past doesn't keep office hours. Outside, the rain had turned into mist, soft but endless. He walked toward his car, mind racing. Every clue circled back to one point, the Marlow family had never really disappeared. Not all of them. Back in his loft, Benjamin placed the folder on the piano. He poured himself green tea, the familiar scent grounding him for a moment. Then he spread out the evidence across the piano lid, photo, letter, key, and newspaper clipping. A puzzle, built for him. He studied the photo of Evelyn again. The reflection in the window behind her wasn't hers. It was the same tall silhouette he'd seen in the old crime scene photo, the same one he'd seen at the house 2 nights ago. And now, he was sure. Whoever was behind this didn't just know his past. They had been there with him. As the clock struck midnight, a soft envelope slid under his door. No knock. No footsteps. Just silence afterward. He approached slowly, picked it up, and tore it open. Inside, another photograph. It showed his own apartment. The piano. The scattered papers. And him, sitting exactly as he was now. A line of text beneath it read. You see the past too clearly, Benjamin. Try looking at the present. For a long moment, he didn't move. The air felt heavier, the city outside holding its breath. Then he smiled faintly, that familiar spark in his eyes returning. All right, he whispered, let's play your game. He placed the new photograph beside the others, straightened his cuffs, and turned off the lights. The only sound that remained was the steady ticking of the clock, and the faint hum of rain, falling against the glass. The next morning brought no light, only a paler shade of darkness. New York hid beneath low clouds, the streets wet and glistening like the veins of a restless machine. Benjamin moved through his routine with mechanical calm. Shower. Shave. Tea. He played 3 quiet notes on the piano, a habit, not a melody. Each sound echoed through the empty loft, vanishing too quickly. He hadn't slept. The photograph from last night still lay on the desk, proof that someone had been inside his apartment, close enough to watch him breathe. He studied it again. Every detail was perfect, the lighting, the angle, the precise moment he'd lifted his cup of tea. Whoever had taken it knew exactly how he moved, how he thought. Benjamin turned the picture over. A faint smudge of ink, a fingerprint, maybe. He smiled to himself. Getting careless, aren't we? He slipped the photo into an evidence folder and left the apartment. The city greeted him with noise and impatience, horns, footsteps, the hiss of wet tires. But beneath it all, there was something else, something quieter, the feeling of being watched. At the corner of 7th Avenue, he noticed a black sedan parked across the street. Tinted windows. Engine off. It had been there the night before, too. He crossed casually, pretending to check his phone, eyes flicking toward the reflection in a shop window. The car's side mirror tilted slightly. Someone inside was adjusting their view. Benjamin walked past, hands in his pockets, then turned into an alley and waited. The car didn't move. He stepped out of sight and smiled faintly. Whoever was following him wanted to be seen, and that made them predictable. 2 hours later, he returned to his office, a modest space above an old bookstore. Inside, everything was as he'd left it, except for one thing. On his desk, beside the case files, lay a small black device. A recorder. He pressed play. Static. Then his own voice filled the room. "She's still in the house." He froze. The tone was unmistakably his, calm, analytical, but he had never said those words. He listened again. The same phrase, repeated, softer this time, like an echo in a tunnel. "She's still in the house." He turned off the recorder and leaned back in his chair, thinking. Someone had gone to great lengths to imitate him. Or worse, to make him question what he remembered. A knock at the door broke the silence. Keller stepped in, his expression tense. "You look like hell." "I've had better nights." "We checked the letter you showed me. No prints. No trace. Whoever's doing this knows how to disappear." Benjamin nodded slowly. "That's what worries me." He handed Keller the recorder. "Play it." Keller frowned as he listened. "That's your voice." "I know. So what are you saying, that someone's copying you?" Benjamin looked out the window, watching raindrops slide down the glass. "Not copying. Anticipating." Keller stared at him, confused. "You think they know what you'll say before you say it?" "Something like that." They stood in silence for a moment, the hum of the city far below. Then Keller sighed. "I'll run a trace on the recorder. But if this is what it looks like, hard, you might not be chasing them. They might be leading you." Benjamin smirked faintly. "That would make it more interesting." After Keller left, he sat alone, the city fading into twilight beyond the window. He replayed the voice in his head, his voice. The phrasing, the rhythm, the slight pause before the final word. Exactly how he would have said it. He poured himself another cup of tea, the steam curling in the dim light. For the first time in years, a thin line of unease crept beneath his calm. Across the street, in a building opposite his office, a window flickered. Someone was there, just a silhouette against the light. Standing still. Watching. Benjamin's gaze met the window's dark glass. The figure didn't move. He didn't either. Minutes passed. The light went out. He exhaled slowly and whispered, almost amused. "You're getting bolder." Then he closed the blinds, dimmed the lamp, and began to write notes, timelines, connections. Because if someone wanted him to play, he would. But he always played to win. The rain had stopped. But the mist hung heavy over Willow Street, curling around the old house like smoke. Benjamin Hart approached slowly, every step measured. The brass key in his pocket felt colder than usual, heavier, a reminder that this house wasn't just a building. It was a challenge. He pushed open the front door. The hinges groaned like a warning. Inside, shadows clung to the corners, stretching unnaturally as his flashlight cut through the gloom. The air smelled of damp wood, old paper, and something faintly metallic. Benjamin moved methodically, scanning every detail. Broken furniture, splintered frames, the faint imprint of footprints on the dusty floor. Everything suggested that someone had been here recently. Someone meticulous. The staircase loomed ahead, dark and narrow. He ascended slowly, his hand brushing the railing, feeling the grooves and splinters. On the second floor, a hallway stretched out like a black ribbon. Half-closed doors lined both sides, each hiding unknown secrets. At the end, a door, slightly ajar, pulsed with a dim, flickering light. Benjamin approached. The air grew colder, heavier. His instincts sharpened, every nerve alive. He pushed the door open. The room was unlike anything he had expected. Every wall, every inch, was covered with mirrors. Floor to ceiling. The ceiling itself reflected the flickering light of a single candle in the center of the room. The effect was dizzying, infinite reflections, endless repetitions. In the middle of the room stood a chair, facing a small camera mounted on a tripod. A faint hum filled the air, almost imperceptible, like the pulse of a hidden engine. Benjamin stepped forward, the floorboards groaning under his weight. He caught a movement in one of the mirrors, a flash of shadow behind him. He spun. Nothing. Only reflections. The candle flickered again, and for a brief moment, he saw it, a figure in the corner, tall, motionless. He blinked. It vanished. He crouched, examining the floor. Scattered around the chair were photographs, recent ones. Each showed him, entering his loft, handling files, reading letters. Every move he had made in the past week documented. Benjamin felt a chill creep down his spine. "So you're playing the same game here," he murmured. He walked toward the camera. The lens pointed directly at the chair, directly at him. He studied it carefully, noting the angle, the light, the shadows. Someone had been observing him, inside this very room. Then he noticed the mirrors more closely. Each reflection was slightly off, the angles, the distances, even the lighting. Someone had manipulated this space deliberately, crafting illusions. He moved to the nearest mirror. His reflection stared back, calm, analytical, but for a moment, it smiled differently. Not him. Benjamin stepped back. The candle flickered violently, casting shadows that danced along the mirrored walls. Every reflection seemed to watch him, waiting. A soft click echoed through the room. The camera's tripod shifted slightly, though he had not touched it. He crouched, checking the floor again, and found a small keyhole behind the chair. His brass key fit perfectly. He turned it. A panel in the wall slid open, revealing a hidden passage. Benjamin paused. He could hear his own heartbeat, steady but intense. The passage led downward, into darkness. The smell of damp stone and old metal drifted up. Lightning flashed outside the broken window. In the mirrors, he saw a fleeting reflection of the figure again, standing at the threshold of the hidden passage. Benjamin took a deep breath. "All right. Let's see what you've been hiding." He stepped forward into the darkness, the mirrors multiplying his own silhouette infinitely behind him. Every step echoed, a countdown in a game he didn't yet understand. The hidden passage led Benjamin down a narrow staircase, the air growing colder with each step. Damp stone walls pressed in on both sides, dripping water from long-forgotten cracks. Every footfall echoed, sharp, deliberate, reminder that silence could be deafening. At the bottom, the corridor opened into a room that smelled of old paper and antiseptic. Metal shelves lined the walls, stacked with files, folders, and boxes labeled with dates and cryptic codes. The faint hum of electricity hinted that some system, hidden, alive, still pulsed here. Benjamin crouched and picked up a file marked Marlow's, confidential. Dust lifted in a small cloud, catching the weak light from his flashlight. The folder was thick, filled with documents, photographs, and handwritten notes. He began to read. The Marlow family had been part of an experimental project led by a private laboratory, long since closed. The files described studies of human perception, stress responses, and the effect of visual stimuli on memory and behavior. Participants had been observed, tested, even manipulated. And in every record, Benjamin's own name appeared, listed as a consultant, providing psychological analysis. He paused. A memory surfaced, a late-night consultation a decade ago, a series of questions, subtle tests he had barely registered. At the time, it had seemed routine, academic. But now it was part of something much larger. Photos of Evelyn as a child, her parents, the same house on Willow Street, all carefully catalogued, all marked with notes, high stress response, observant, reacts to familiar figures. Benjamin's fingers traced the pages, stopping at one annotated diagram of the house he had visited. Tiny symbols marked mirrors, windows, and hallways. Annotations in neat handwriting. Target responds to self-reflection, increased anxiety and insight. Monitor closely. He exhaled slowly. The design was meticulous, deliberate. Every move he had made in the last week, every step toward Evelyn, every observation, had been anticipated. A soft noise made him look up. The passage behind him had shifted slightly, though no one was there. Benjamin scanned the room, flashlight cutting across the shelves. He noticed a small locked cabinet, its brass keyhole gleaming faintly. The brass key in his pocket seemed to hum with recognition. He inserted it. The lock clicked. Inside, photographs, recordings, and more files, all recent. Someone had reopened this archive, continued the experiment without notice. Benjamin felt a cold realization settle over him. The game was ongoing. Evelyn wasn't just missing, she was part of a controlled study, monitored, guided, influenced. And he had unknowingly walked into the center of it. A single folder caught his eye, Participant 7, Observations. He opened it carefully. The first page showed him, precise, calm, analytical. Notes described his reactions to stress, to observation, to deception. Every psychological cue he'd given over the past decade had been catalogued. Benjamin's jaw tightened. Someone had been studying him as closely as he had studied the Marlow family. Every step, every decision, every flicker of doubt had been noted. He set the folder aside and began scanning the rest. Evelyn's current files indicated she was alive, monitored in real time, and that her disappearance had been orchestrated to elicit specific responses, to him. The room seemed to close in. Every shadow stretched longer, every corner darker. He could feel the invisible presence of the observer, just beyond the edges of light. Benjamin stood, the files clutched tightly. His mind raced, connecting dots, forming patterns, predicting possibilities. He whispered under his breath. So this is why the past never left me, why they sent the letters, the photos, the keys. The room was silent except for the soft hum of electricity and the occasional drip of water. Lightning flashed through a narrow window at the end of the corridor. For a moment, he thought he saw a figure standing just beyond the glass, watching. Waiting. Benjamin's eyes narrowed. "All right," he murmured, "I see you. Let's continue." The brass key weighed heavily in his pocket, a tangible link to both past and present. He turned to leave the room, carefully replacing every file, making sure nothing was disturbed. And as he climbed back toward the hidden staircase, a thought struck him: this wasn't just a game of observation. It was a test. And whoever was behind it had been planning this for years, anticipating him, every step, every choice. Outside, the mist had thickened. Willow Street seemed empty, but Benjamin knew better. Someone was still there. Watching. Always watching. Benjamin returned to the Willow Street house as the sun dipped behind a curtain of gray clouds. The rain had left the streets glistening, reflecting city lights like fractured mirrors. The house loomed, silent and waiting, its broken windows like empty eyes. He pushed the front door open. Inside, the air was heavier than usual, damp, metallic, charged with anticipation. He could feel it, the presence that had been guiding, testing, observing. Upstairs, the room of mirrors awaited. He entered slowly. The walls, ceiling, and even parts of the floor were covered with glass, each reflection repeating the room infinitely. It was disorienting, dizzying, a hall of endless selves. Benjamin moved carefully, flashlight cutting across the mirrored surfaces. Each reflection responded to him, but not perfectly. Some moved slightly behind his motions, some paused before he did, some smiled when he didn't. He stopped in the center, the candle casting shadows that multiplied with every flicker. His own reflection stared back, calm, analytical, and then it twisted. Smiled. Not him. Benjamin's breath grew shallow. "All right, you want to show yourself." A sound, subtle, almost imperceptible, came from behind him. He turned slowly. The mirrors revealed nothing directly, only the play of light and shadow. But in the reflection, he saw it, a figure, tall, still, wearing the same long coat he had glimpsed before. Watching. He stepped closer to a mirror, analyzing the angles, the distortions. Every reflection contained clues, the placement of a chair, the flicker of the candle, subtle shifts in shadow. Someone had orchestrated this space meticulously. On the floor, another photograph lay, recent, crisp, showing him inside his loft, studying the Marlow files. Each photograph had been taken without his knowledge, captured at precise moments. Benjamin realized, slowly, with that icy thrill he felt before every great revelation, someone wasn't just observing him. They were orchestrating his perception, guiding his choices, crafting illusions to test him. He took a deep breath, stepping closer to the candle. The reflections seemed to converge, focusing attention, pulling him into a single point of understanding. And then, for a split second, all mirrors aligned perfectly. He saw the figure clearly, a man standing behind a second layer of glass, holding a camera. The man's face was calm, controlled, deliberate. Not angry, not scared. "You've come far," the man's reflection seemed to whisper. "But can you see the truth?" Benjamin moved quickly, testing the angles. Every reflection offered a hint, subtle differences in positioning, flickers of light, slight distortions. He understood the game, the mirrors revealed reality only if he looked beyond them, if he trusted his instincts rather than what his eyes reported. He reached out, touching the mirror. His hand met cold glass, but behind it, faint outlines of a hidden panel. Carefully, he pressed, exploring the edges. A door slid open silently, revealing a narrow corridor descending into darkness. The figure in the mirrors remained. Watching. Waiting. Benjamin stepped forward into the corridor, flashlight cutting the blackness. "Show me everything," he whispered. "I don't just want the past. I want the present. The truth." As he descended, the candlelight from the mirror room reflected one last time across the glass, multiplying endlessly. For a moment, he thought he saw Evelyn's face in one of the reflections, calm, waiting, eyes filled with unspoken fear and trust. The truth, he realized, wasn't just in the reflections. It was in his perception, his choices, his understanding of what was real and what was orchestrated. And at that moment, he knew, the next step would reveal everything: the experiment, the observer, and the fate of Evelyn Marlow. He tightened his coat, took a slow, deliberate breath, and moved forward. The corridor ended abruptly. Benjamin's flashlight revealed a single door, old wood scarred with scratches and time. He pushed it open. The room beyond was small, clinical. Walls lined with instruments, monitors, and scattered papers. A faint hum of electricity vibrated in the air. In the center, behind a glass panel, stood a figure. Tall, precise, calm. Dr. Larsen. Benjamin had seen his face before, only in fragments, photographs, documents, old files. Now, standing before him, the man exuded control. Every movement deliberate, every glance measured. "Ah, Mr. Hard," Larsen said, voice smooth, controlled. "You've finally arrived." Benjamin's eyes narrowed. "You've been orchestrating all of this." Larsen smiled faintly. "Observing, yes. Guiding, yes. Testing, certainly. The Marlow family, Evelyn, you, all part of a grand design. Human behavior, stress response, moral decision-making. You are part of an experiment decades in the making." Benjamin's jaw tightened. "You kidnapped a woman, played games with her life, just to see if you could manipulate me?" Larsen's smile didn't falter. "Not manipulate. Predict. Understand. You are exceptional, Mr. Hard. Your instincts, your analytical mind, fascinating. I needed to see how far your principles would carry you." Benjamin took a measured step closer. "And if I failed?" Larsen's eyes held a flicker of amusement. "Then you would have learned humility." Benjamin's mind raced. The photographs, the letters, the mirrors, the hidden passages, all pieces of a puzzle he had slowly assembled. Evelyn had been alive all along. Every clue, every fear, every false lead had been part of Larsen's meticulous testing. Benjamin leaned closer to the glass. "Where is she?" Larsen gestured. A door behind him opened. Evelyn stepped out. Pale, tense, but alive. Relief washed over Benjamin, but Larsen's eyes held him in place. "You see," Larsen said, "she trusts you. And yet, every step you took was anticipated. Every decision catalogued. You think you are solving this, but truly, you are following a path I laid out years ago." Benjamin studied Larsen carefully, noticing subtle tics, the faintest imperfection in his perfect composure. "You've underestimated one thing." "And what is that?" Larsen asked, voice calm, almost teasing. Benjamin's gaze hardened. "Human intuition. Human unpredictability. I don't just follow patterns. I read people." For the first time, Larsen's smile wavered. Benjamin advanced, calm but deliberate. He analyzed, anticipated, and then acted, a flick of the wrist, the subtle placement of a foot, small gestures, but precise. Larsen's reaction was immediate, revealing the first crack in his control. The tension in the room was palpable, a duel of minds, silent but electric. Every reflection, every shadow, every sound of the monitors became part of their interaction. Finally, Benjamin spoke, voice low and unwavering. "This ends now. No more games. No more fear." Larsen studied him, eyes narrowing. Then, almost imperceptibly, he nodded. "Very well, Mr. Hard. Let us see how far your human unpredictability can take you." Evelyn exhaled, stepping closer to Benjamin. Relief and trust mingled in her eyes. Benjamin's hand brushed hers briefly, silently reassuring. Then he turned back to Larsen. Calm, collected, but ready. The final confrontation had begun. The room was silent, save for the low hum of monitors and the faint drip of water somewhere in the corner. Benjamin Hard stood before Dr. Larsen, every sense alert, every movement calculated. Evelyn's presence beside him reminded him what was truly at stake. Larsen's eyes scanned Benjamin, searching for hesitation. But there was none. Only clarity. Only focus. "Your games end tonight," Benjamin said, voice steady, almost serene. Larsen tilted his head. "Ah, Mr. Hard. You've learned to predict patterns, but can you predict chaos?" Benjamin's gaze flicked to the monitors. Every camera, every reflection, every piece of equipment Larsen had relied on to control the environment was now useless. He understood it all, the mirrors, the hidden passages, the orchestrated fear. Larsen's confidence, his meticulous planning, was a framework built on the assumption that Benjamin would react like any other subject. But Benjamin was not just a subject. He moved slowly, deliberately, and Larsen flinched for the first time. Evelyn stepped forward. Her voice was calm, but firm. "He's right. You're done. No more hiding, no more watching." Larsen's composure cracked ever so slightly. His hands, so precise and controlled, twitched at his sides. Benjamin noticed every micro-expression, every small tell. He had studied human behavior for decades. Now, he wielded it like a weapon. "Release her," Benjamin commanded. Larsen laughed softly, almost amused, but the sound lacked conviction. "You think it's that simple? Years of study, all for a single confrontation. You cannot undo what has been set in motion." Benjamin's eyes didn't leave his. Calm, confident, unwavering. "I don't need to undo it. I need to end it." With a single motion, Benjamin used Larsen's own control room equipment against him. Lights flashed, doors unlocked, monitors disabled, every element Larsen had manipulated to maintain authority was turned against him. The mirrors, once a tool of deception, reflected Larsen's own image back at him infinitely, revealing every imperfection, every hint of doubt. For the first time, Larsen understood he was no longer the orchestrator. He was part of Benjamin's environment, subject to observation. Benjamin approached slowly, voice low. "You taught me about human behavior. I've learned enough from you to stop this." Larsen backed away, cornered, his confidence eroding. Evelyn moved closer to Benjamin, safe now, her trust unwavering. Finally, Larsen stopped. He straightened, nodded, almost in resignation. "Perhaps. I underestimated you." Benjamin's eyes softened slightly, but his voice remained firm. "Underestimation has consequences. For you, for anyone who thinks control is absolute." He guided Evelyn out of the room. The hidden corridors, the mirrors, the instruments, all remained behind, silent witnesses to the end of the experiment. Outside, the mist of Willow Street clung to the old house, but now it felt empty, freed from the weight of fear and manipulation. Evelyn inhaled deeply, looking at Benjamin. "Thank you," she whispered. Benjamin nodded, a faint smile touching his lips. "You trusted me. That was all I needed." As they left the house, the rain returned, gentle and cleansing. Benjamin paused, looking back at the building. Years of secrets, games, and observation were now just walls and shadows. He pocketed the brass key, his silent trophy of another case closed. His mind already replayed the details, analyzing the patterns, the psychology, the decisions that had led to this resolution. In the distance, the city pulsed with life, indifferent and eternal. And Benjamin, calm and composed, allowed himself a rare moment of satisfaction. "Case closed," he murmured to himself. And for the first time in weeks, he walked away without looking back, the storm behind him fading, and the path ahead clear.